Hello everyone, welcome back to Heart Not Life Sailing. In this video, we continue to build our hardtop. We were able to hoist it up with the help of the halyard and positioned it on top of our former bimini and set it up in place. Mike will explain rather than show how he built the temporary frame to speed things up. We also started placing the pieces of PVC material to make the dodger. The process is the same way. The rain collector edge was made in a previous video and shaped the same way with a heat gun, which we'll explain throughout this video as well. If you want to check the process from the beginning, please watch our previous videos. Enjoy this episode!
Rig I built for holding this top in place, and if you'll notice, this is all the same materials I used for the frame that I built to lay the sheets down to get the original arch. So I continue to recycle all these screws and pieces of wood. I just ripped some smaller, ripped some in half, and made jacks. So it's where you cut two shorter pieces and just screw them together. That way you can make adjustments as you need. So if you need things a little higher, a little lower, you can easily make those adjustments. So once I got that sitting in place, this is what I used because I didn't find my real plumb tool. I just used a large washer on a string and I hung it on all the corners, making sure it's lined up. Once I was all done, of course, I found my real one. So if you have something like this, it's the proper tool for the job, but I didn't find it until I was done. I measured off of the combing here to the top to get that even. So I ripped this into a 2-inch strip, rounded over both sides of the top of it, and used some wood and clamps here and heated it up as I bent it to the shape of the boat. I put some temporary screws in it just to hold it in place. And then once it was all said and done and cooled off and held the shape, I removed most of the screws and I laid up some 2-inch biaxial strip on top of it. So then this will, for the most part, stay in the shape that I wanted to. It shifted a tiny little bit here and there, but nothing I'm going to worry about. Once this was in place and hardened up, I added this strip around the top. I just marked out where I wanted the curvature to be. It doesn't follow the actual bottom. It's set back a bit so that there's a visor effect to keep some of the sun off of here. Once I had this in place with some screws, I put some thickened resin, and it also has a round over just on the inside edge here because this is the only exposed side is right here. So once this was in place and hardened, I worked on my verticals. Now this way I know where my verticals are going to be at the bottom, but at the top I can rest it, mark out where I want it, and I can rest it against there and even put screws in there to hold it in place while I'm continuing on. That got glued to here with thickened resin, screwed in, so now it's not going to go anywhere. The nice thing with working with this PVC is it's fairly sturdy. If I was to use foam and climbing out of here just once, and if I put my hand on that foam, I would have snapped the foam in half. Where this PVC is a lot stronger than the foam, but it's still not structurally strong. This is just to hold the shape of what I'm building until the fiberglass goes on. I'm going to be building the structure of the front of our windscreen, or dodger, if you want to call it a dodger, even though it'd be a massive dodger. I built it all out of PVC, and then once all of those are on, I went around and made these curved portions. If these were a little bit more tricky, I would first bend them using a strap, which I'll show you. I used a ratchet strap and a heat gun to get the initial curvature, and then I put blocks and clamps once they're to size, thickened resin all around the area, and then blocks and clamps to get the exact contour. And then once that's hardened, I can move on to the next section. So I'm mixing it with quite a bit of the hardening agent, which is called mech. I use quite a bit of it so that I can keep reusing those clamps as I go around. I'll show you how I did one right now with this center portion. First I find the widest point, 20 3/4, so I'm gonna go 20 7/8 because this curves a little bit. I'm gonna cut that out of this slightly pre-curved stock that I have. It does not have to be perfectly square, it's close enough. Little gaps, they really don't matter. The thickened resin that we're putting in is stronger than this. This is just a core material. I used PVC because you can heat it up and bend it, and it relatively holds that shape. If I use foam core, you have to hold it in that position with fiberglass on it on both sides before it holds that shape. But with the PVC, I can put a heat gun to it and I can shape these contours, clamp it, and it's done. So I wrap the strap around here, center the strap on the board, crank it tight, so raise it a bit on the one side to start your contour. And then I take a heat gun and I start warming it up. And as you get it warmer, you can tighten up that strap. It gets easier and easier to tighten up. After you do it once or twice, you don't need the block in there anymore because it's already got enough curvature. This is what I mean by the block. Definitely don't want to hold it in one spot or you will burn it or melt it. All you want to do is get it nice and hot so that it bends easy. And if you bend it while it's really hot, it stays in that shape, which makes it, to me, I think it's the perfect material for a job like this because you can pre-bend everything. Because I had to follow the contour here, it changed the shape of the bottom, so now it makes the tops look like they're arched a bit. Also on this one particular, it looks like I have a little bit too much material there that it's bowed. It's curved a little bit too much out, so I'm gonna slice a little notch out of this and put some resin in there and some clamps and pull it back in a bit so that I get a bit nicer of a shape before I continue on that. Now you can't be afraid to cut material out of this because the resin is stronger than this actual backing material, so it doesn't really matter. It's not like woodworking where you're losing your strength adding glue. The glue is stronger than this core. I may have taken out a little bit extra out of that, but I really want to pull this in and then we'll just fill that in after. And heat it up with the heat gun. It looked good from the outside, but from the inside, it looks like too much curve. And that's where you're mostly going to see that from the inside. Heating it up along the line that I wanted to curve. It really matters where you put your heat when you're using the PVC. You can make that piece do a pretty sharp turn without heating the rest of it if you really want to shape this stuff. Starting to definitely look like a better curve now. Let that cool off and then I'll inject some resin inside there. Alright, now that these are in place, I've straightened those out a little bit or gave it better curvature. Now what I did is use the compass to mark out this, because once I curve this, it has a different slope. So if you're looking from inside the cabin, they look like they're a bunch of arches because it's not following the contour of this anymore. So we're going to be lowering this down to the lowest mark I've got on here. That did not turn out too pretty. I'll sand that down And maybe the jigsaw would be a better choice. I'll try that on the next one. So I'm just gonna keep continuing doing that all the way around. By the time I get to the part where the clamps are, that should be dry. And I won't bore you with that. Let's carry on to the next step. I did the same principle here as I did at the bottom. It's just lots of heating and shaping until you get it to go right in there. The last little twist, I'm gonna heat up and use the heat gun and clamps to get that. Put a taper on the top side now instead of the bottom side. Follow the contour of the ceiling. And if you're finding it's curving not enough in one area, you simply add more heat to that area and it'll curve where you want it to curve. So you can control your curve pretty easily by just adding more heat to where you want more curve. So I don't want too much right in the middle. That's probably gonna be pretty close there. Quite a bit over curved. So I'm going to release this before it gets too cool, and it'll drop back into the position I want. Clean up a little bit of that residue that's in there from gluing the verticals. Get this curve here pretty centered, so I have an even gap on each side. I mark that with a pencil. It's been called scribe line. You see how much I got to trim off here and draw a line back here. And now I'm going to be a lot closer to what I want. So this stuff's soft enough, you can just use a sander with a 40 grit paper on it. That'll do a lot of your shaping. It's going on an angle here that's only the front edge that's touching. And there goes my Velcro. This is why everything takes so long. And then you have to get out of your little perch, make your way to where your tools are. I'll be back. Got some paper on there now. What I found was an 80 grit, should be alright. And definitely sand both sides of this before you install it, because you're going to want to fiberglass over this and you want it scuffed up before you fiberglass. We do a dry fit. It's not likely going to be perfect. Every time you'll be a little bit closer. Alright, that is pretty much perfect. So I'm going to take off these ones I did over here. If you have these vice grip ones, these are the best because you only need one hand to set them. Ideal to have a lot of clamps if you can get them. I covered these blocks with tape, just clear boxing tape. The resin doesn't stick to it, so I can keep reusing these and I can remove them each time. Also, another tip is I mix up some thickened resin first with chop strand and silica. Pre-mix a pretty big batch, and then I just mix in the hardener on a board. That way I'm not going through tons of containers every single time I'm doing one little section. It saves on materials and it saves time not having to pre-mix your thickeners. Some tape down on the board also keeps the resin from sticking. I'm going to work from this side. We just got a big blob there. Chop strand mixed with silica. Make a little jacuzzi hole in there. Stays right in the middle. Making this to be a pretty quick cure, more than I'd normally use of hardener, so that this hardens quick enough for me to keep reusing my clamps. Being a small batch, you got to remember to mix it really well. You can't skimp on the mixing or you'll have parts that never cure. Always remembering to scrape it off the bottom of the board. Got a pretty big batch this time. That's okay, I've got lots of spaces to fill. Gluing here, along the top, and down here on both sides of the work, so that trying to get that resin to squirt out all around. And any excess resin I'll just put into some of the gaps on the previous ones. And it's all turning green now, so it's a good sign it's thoroughly covered with hardener. both sides of each. It's definitely porous along the edges. Get my blocks ready, clamps ready. That is one section done. And now what I'm going to work on next is making some roundovers on these corners, so I don't have sharp corners. I want them to be rounded a little bit. I'm going to be using a 4-inch hole saw and just clamping my piece on here, cutting it with the hole saw, and then cutting out the angled part and then gluing them all in. Takes a lot of material just to make a tiny little corner. Just a little bit. Cut a couple of these out, see what it looks like. One turned out alright. I'm going to try a different way here just to see what's better. I'm going to try this piece of leftover scrap I got. Marking that little corner. Alright, so for now, I'm just going to tape them all in place until I have them all ready. And then I'll go around with some resin and glue them all in place when I have enough to do. So I just pre-make my thickened resin, put some hardener in there. So I probably will not need any clamps here because this resin is very thick and sticky. This stage, things do not have to look pretty. This is just filling in spaces that will be later glassed. Alright, there we go. 3 done. Super easy. It's thick enough, it just holds itself in place, and I've got rounded corners. And to keep going around, and I'll do all of these and get back to you. Okay, carrying on with this hardtop installation, I had to raise our boom, not where it is now, but it was down here, and it went basically right on top of this. So to give us some clearance, and I'm gonna have to shorten the sail, I'm moving the boom up. So in the case of this boom, this pin was seized onto this part of the gooseneck. It is not separating. That's aluminum, that's stainless, so they've corroded together. But I was able to get these screws out using a special bit. It's a high strength slotted screwdriver bit that goes on an impact wrench, so it's an impact slotted bit. I was able to remove these. Luckily it goes into a backing plate, and I had a feeling that that backing plate was going to be separate, so I attached this little screw here to some rope to capture it. So as soon as I took that last screw off, it fell down and landed on here. So once I got that removed, I marked where I wanted to go, 10 inches up, so it gives me lots of clearance. Just re-drilling these holes now. I'll slide the gooseneck down, slide up that backing plate, and use some small screwdrivers to line up the holes, and then hopefully get those bolts back on. Might take some playing around, but just that I would explain that step in case you have to do the same. So if you are continuing to watch, stay tuned. We'll be doing our swim platform, dinghy davits, big heavy-duty dinghy davits, new steps going up to the deck, and of course this whole hardtop Dodger combination. So this is how it's looking now. I'm gonna let that last bit of glue dry because I'm out of clamps, but it's okay, I got enough done. Somehow this one slipped down a little bit before it hardened, or else I missed it when I put it up. Perhaps it slid down and I just couldn't see it because I was on the wrong side of it. But it's easy enough, I'm just gonna trim that off afterwards. Next up, stay tuned for next week because we're going to be building the main support. So the main support is going on this side. It's going to be braced with, see if I have one here. It's kind of like divinicell, but this is as hard as a brick. Like you can't scratch it with your nail. It's rock solid. That's going to be our bottom base so that we can actually physically attach it to the boat with bolts. This is what they make transoms out of. It's 1.5 inches, so it's exactly double the material that we're using here. And within that structure will also be the drainage for our rain collector. So our rain collector is going to go through this main beam as well as all of our wiring going into the boat. And then the rain collector will go outside where when it rains and we're going to use the water, we'll just connect the hose to it and run it over to the input for our water source. Stay tuned for all of that coming up. Thanks a lot for watching. I hope you learned something. If you see things that you think I should do differently, feel free to comment below. I'm happy to learn too. This is my first time doing it. I've done jobs kind of similar, you know, kiteboard, surfboard type of things, but never anything this large. So if you got anything to say, I'd love to hear it. See you next week. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and click the notification bell. Have a good day.